People ask me all the time, how much would it cost to fix blah, blah, blah? This amp or that amp. And, sometimes I know, if it's a super reverb, if it's a 2203 Marshall, I know what the answers are. But it's not like I have a crystal ball or a big book of what amps cost to fix. For instance, in this case, it's a Bogner Shiva. It needs a total recap. All I can do on the phone is give them an estimate. I think this will take 3 hours. And I know that the parts will probably be somewhere in the vicinity of $30, $30 to $40. I can't be more precise than that, because in order for me to even know what the parts needed will be and get a price for them, I have to pull this entire board out to be able to get to the underside of this board, because these radial caps, I can see the values from the top, and I can see the diameters and heights from the top. What I cannot see from the top is the lead spacing. Are these 5 millimeters or 7.5 millimeters? Are these 7.5 millimeters or 10 millimeters? Are these 10 millimeters or 15 millimeters? Probably 10. Are they through hole or snap-on? These are going to be through hole. These are going to be snap-on. And these I don't know. So then, once I know every dimension of the capacitors necessary, then I've got to go through my suppliers and say, okay, 270 microfarad at, let's say 300 volts. 400 volts, there it is. Well, I've got to find all the 270 microfarad caps at 400 volts that fit the dimensions, then find the ones with the lowest ESR, find the ones that handle the ripple current the best, rated for 105 degrees, hopefully, or more. Am I going to get a 1,000-hour cap, a 10,000-hour cap? In some cases, 270 is no longer made. This is just for instance, would a 220 be an acceptable substitute? Is a 330 an acceptable substitute? All these decisions. So once I know all the dimensions, finding the suitable part to make the bill of materials can take another 30 minutes to an hour. So before I even know what the cost will be, there's quite a bit of labor involved, because I do have to charge for my time just looking at parts from the various vendors. Now once I do this, I will have a bill of material called Bogner Shiva Mark II, because this is the second version of it. And then in the future, if someone comes in with a Shiva, I can say, hey, the parts for that are blah, 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 and I don't have to do that. But the first time I do any major work on a model, there's some R&D, and it's one of those things where if I expect I'll be doing a lot of that model, I'll waive the R&D time. It's not really D, but it's definitely R. If I expect that, okay, I'll be doing a lot of this model over the next 5-10 years, I'll eat the cost it takes me to get these parts together. I'm probably not going to be doing a lot of total recaps on Shivas. So in this case, that research time gets billed. Anyway, let me get started on this. I've got to take everything off the front panel, pull all the preamp tubes, disconnect stuff from the rear panel so it could all pull out together, and see which of the wires on this side of the board will need to be disconnected for the thing to lift up. And then I've got to carefully document where everything goes. So there's a lot involved in this. Let's get started. All right, almost everything is loose. I got to figure out which wires need to be disconnected temporarily so I can lift the board fully out. I want to show you a few things that are worth taking note of. All the stuff that connects on the front panel is in one little sandwich bag. All the stuff that I do topside, so that's the lock washers and all the screws here in another one, and all the stuff for the rear panel in the third. Now, before I do anything else, this front panel is flapping loose because all the connections are gone except for the one down here. The next one's down by the power switch and the indicator light. So that's a good way to get that aluminum panel to bend and get messed up in the process if I'm just not careful and I'm not thinking. So I take some blue painter's tape And I want to make sure that it doesn't have any stickum that's going to go to the chassis or the panel. Now, it's probably okay as it is. It's low-tack stuff, but just to help it out, I've VUPA it a few times in my blue jeans. That lowers the tackiness. And I'm not talking about my acid wash jeans here. I keyed. But it means that it'll hold the panel as well as I need it to. Keep it from flopping around, but it won't leave a bunch of residue that I would then have to clean up afterwards. So doing the same thing here, right in the middle. And that'll just keep that panel from coming loose and getting deformed, because that'll bend if you look at it too hard. All right, so now I've got to figure out which of these wires I need to disconnect to get the whole thing up. I know at least this blue one, and hopefully that's the only one I'll need to do. Well, I was hoping just to disconnect this one blue wire, but because of this lip on the side here in the chassis, it can't just rotate up because of the way the board has this, the chassis has this intrusion for the output tube, so they're recessed. So I need to disconnect these wires here, which I hate having to do, but it's for the good of the cause. All right, now that I have access to the underside of the board, I'm happy to report for other techs that every large electrolytic cap in this amp has got a 10 millimeter lead spacing, which is a little bit unusual. Usually the smaller diameter caps will be like 7.5, some will be 5. There's still a few little small electrolytics I've got to confirm in here, but all the big boys are 10 millimeter lead spacing. While I've got it open, there's some other things I need to do. There are various bad solder joints. A few more in here, and I'll be cleaning things up as I discover things. Just while I have access, let's get it right. All right, these caps have been pulled and spec'd at Mouser. And these are mostly 85 degree parts. I'm replacing them all with 105 degree rated capacitors with at least 5,000 hours life, more when I can get them. And none of these are visibly leaking, but that doesn't mean that they're all great. That one might have a little bit of a bulge to it. To the rest of it, these little remaining radial electrolytics, I put the black dot on them with a marker to show myself which ones I've already accounted for. And they're all spec'd out to be ordered. A note on these amps and a lot of Mesas. Here, C8 Team is already replaced with this electrolytic that I'm going to take out and put an electrolytic here where this tantalum used to be. Here we've got one of the tantalums. Now, tantalums are used by a lot of amp companies because they are small, and in theory, they don't wear out. Electrolytics have a 15-year lifespan, maybe. Tantalums, in theory, last forever. But tantalums, if they get any kind of surge or voltage approaching the rated max, burn horribly, and they often just fail as well. I mean, they promise a lot, and they're okay for use in maybe pedals, not in a signal path, but maybe in a power supply. They have no use. They should not be used in guitar amps. They fail all the time. They fail in Mesas all the time, and I'm going to replace both of them here. But anyway, now I've got the total parts list necessary. Let me make sure there aren't any hidden caps on this board. No, we're good. And the total comes to like $58.72, whatever, just under $60, including shipping for these. So it's not a lot for these parts. And as I said, the ones I'm putting in here will be better parts than the originals. And you can see I've cleaned these parts of the board. I've still got a lot of board cleaning to do. You can see where the clean spots are. Oops. Come on, focus. Stop. Stop, phone. You can see where I've cleaned versus where the old stuff is. I'll get it all cleaned up and make it pretty. And one other consideration in this amp. This is a replaced low voltage power supply. And I've already increased the capacitance of this filter cap here in the brand new board. And we still have a whine in the low voltage power supply. And I may add some additional filtering. It's on this plus minus 12 here. This 12 volt DC positive here. I may add a little bit more filtering to that. I'm going to trace this and see where all these wires go and where a good place to put some additional capacitance would be. I think that will nip that in the bud. And I may further interrupt the existing supply with a resistor and then a capacitor to ground to give it a little bit of separation. Even a few 100 ohms would probably help. But that is getting picked up. And that's, you got to be careful with that kind of thing because there's a pretty good amount of current on there. They're using it for the DC supply to the preamp tube heaters, and they're also using it for switching the optos and relays. And so a lot is being asked of that 12 volts, 12.3 volts, whatever you want it to call it. But it is not very quiet. And this recap is kind of a Hail Mary to see if this amp can keep going another 20 years, or whether it's time to get another amp. People love their Bogners. And I wish I could assure people that the amp is worthy of that love. I'll try my best to make this one at least more worthy.